The house was still when Daniel came home. The kind of quiet that usually meant his wife Julia was on a late call and the kids were already tucked into bed. He eased the front door shut behind him, loosened his tie, and stepped into the familiar space of his home. A clean scent of lavender hung in the air. Everything appeared in its place, just like always. He walked softly across the hardwood floors, past the photographs of smiling faces lining the hallway. His son, Aiden, 7, and daughter, Emma, 5, smiled back at him from a frame, clutching popsicles and grinning in summer sun. He stopped, lingering there for a beat longer than usual. Something, he didn't know what yet, stirred uneasily inside him. He heard Julia's voice faintly, low and clipped, from the back patio. She was on the phone. It wasn't unusual. She often took client calls late in her work as a marketing director. But something in her tone made him pause. "No, not tonight. He's home early. I'll call you tomorrow." Daniel froze. Her voice wasn't angry or professional. It was soft, almost tender. A quiet moment passed. Then her laugh, light and brief. "Yeah, I miss you too." Daniel's stomach hollowed out. He wasn't the impulsive type. He didn't slam the door open. He didn't burst onto the patio demanding answers. He turned instead, walked silently back down the hallway and into the kitchen. He poured himself a glass of water, his hands steady despite the thunder in his chest. He didn't sleep much that night. Lying beside Julia, he listened to her breathing, slow and even. In the dim light, she looked peaceful. Her left hand was curled beneath her cheek, the wedding band glinting faintly under the moonlight, filtering through the blinds. He stared at the ceiling, one thought repeating like a pulse in his mind. You have to be smart. For them. The next morning, he made breakfast. French toast, Aiden's favorite. Julia came in wearing her robe, hair messy from sleep. "Morning," she said, smiling at the kids, kissing Emma's forehead. He smiled back at her. "Coffee? Please." She didn't know, not yet. Daniel spent the next week gathering facts, not confronting, not accusing. Julia's phone habits had changed. She locked it now, kept it close. She claimed late meetings, then came home a little too put together. He noticed how she avoided eye contact when she talked about her day, the faint tremor when he casually asked who she'd been meeting with. He paid attention to what she didn't say, and in the spaces between his discoveries, he clung to his children. He drove them to school each morning, told them jokes at breakfast, helped with science projects after work. He tucked Emma in every night and read her stories until her eyelids fluttered shut. He wasn't pretending to be a good father. He was one, and that, more than anything, steeled his resolve. He knew he couldn't implode, not with Aiden and Emma watching. He wouldn't give them the memory of a broken home crashing down overnight. If his marriage was unraveling, it would not take the children down with it. One night, Julia came home late again, flustered. She had forgotten about dinner plans with another couple and rushed to change while apologizing profusely. Daniel just nodded, brushing off her excuses. "It's fine," he said, his voice level. "I understand you're busy." She paused mid-motion as if unsure whether to feel guilty or relieved. He kissed her cheek. "Go get ready. We'll meet them in 20. He watched her walk upstairs. His phone buzzed, a notification from the private investigator he'd hired, just in case. Photos attached. Confirming patterns. Hotel near Midtown. He didn't open them right away. Instead, he walked into the living room where Aiden was playing with Lego bricks on the floor. "Need a builder's assistant?" he asked, crouching down. Aiden grinned. "I'm making a dragon castle." "Perfect. I always wanted to be a knight." They built together for an hour, even after Julia came down dressed, tapping her watch impatiently. Daniel didn't rush. He wanted the moment with his son. He was learning now that time, real time, was everything. That weekend, he took the kids to the zoo. Julia had a conference out of town. He didn't question it. He did, however, forward the details to his investigator. Quietly, methodically. At the zoo, Emma clung to his hand, wide-eyed at the giraffes. Aiden pressed his face to the glass, watching otters zip through the water. Daniel carried juice boxes in one pocket and wet wipes in the other. He laughed genuinely when Emma dropped popcorn on her shirt and tried to eat it anyway. Later, sitting on a bench, he watched other families pass by. He could feel it, the weight of the secret he carried. But he didn't let it darken his smile. Julia called that night. "How are the kids?" Great, Daniel replied. Emma wants to be a zookeeper now. Aiden says he's going to train lions, she laughed. That sounds like them. There was a pause. Did you have fun? He asked gently. Yeah, the conference went well. Lots of networking. I'm glad. He could hear the lie in her voice like a ripple beneath still water, but his tone never cracked. Later that night, he opened the photos. Julia, with a man Daniel didn't know. At a hotel he did, laughing, her hand on the man's chest, his around her waist. He stared at the images for a long time. He didn't cry. He didn't rage. He saved the files into a hidden folder and closed the laptop. The next morning, he made pancakes for the kids, smiled as Emma licked syrup off her fingers. He would not let this define him. He would not let it destroy what mattered most. He was building something now, too, a plan, a future. And when it was time to confront the truth, it would not be with fury, but with facts, with grace, and with quiet, resolute strength. Julia had no idea, but the end had already begun. The sun filtered gently through the wide glass windows of the Grant family home, casting long golden rays across the polished hardwood floors. Daniel Grant sat at the breakfast table, sipping his black coffee, the quiet hum of the morning barely disturbed by the chatter of his two children. Lily, 7, twirled a spoon in her cereal bowl, while 12-year-old Caleb argued with her about cartoon characters. He smiled, gently intervening with a dad joke that made both kids groan and laugh at the same time. Julia, his wife of 15 years, walked in moments later, her expression composed, her eyes distracted. She kissed the kids' heads, met Daniel's gaze with a quick smile, and poured herself coffee. Daniel played his role with perfection. He kissed her cheek, asked how she'd slept, and offered her toast. She responded like everything was normal. And for the kids, it was. He kept it that way. In private moments, when Julia was showering or taking a call in another room, Daniel reviewed the messages from the investigator. It was always the same pattern. Carefully orchestrated meetups, no paper trail, a name he didn't recognize. But it wasn't about the man. It was about the truth and the calm reckoning to come. Each day he tightened his internal resolve. His lawyer, a discreet family friend, guided him in preparing. He transferred select assets into a protected trust for the kids. He gathered documentation. Nothing rash, nothing loud. He began journaling, an old habit from his university days. In the quiet of his home office, after everyone was asleep, he chronicled everything, the calls, the lies, the interactions, not to obsess, but to clarify. One evening, while Julia was on another client dinner, Daniel sat in the backyard with Caleb, throwing a football back and forth under the porch light. Caleb, on the cusp of teenagehood, had started to ask bigger questions about trust, about relationships. Dad, can I ask you something? Caleb said, catching the ball and holding it close. Of course. How do you know if someone's really honest with you? Like, really honest? Daniel caught the ball and lowered it slowly. That's a good question, he said. I think it's about patterns. What people show you, not just what they say. If someone's consistent, if their words and actions line up over time, you can usually trust them. What if they don't line up? Then you pay attention. You stay calm, and you don't jump to conclusions, but you trust your instincts. Caleb nodded slowly. Makes sense. They kept throwing the ball. That night stayed with Daniel longer than most. He was proud of how his son thought, and more than ever he was certain he had to protect that future. The following Saturday, Julia announced she had an impromptu team-building retreat with her department heads. 2 days. No signal, supposedly. Sounds fun, Daniel said, smiling. I'll take the kids to the lake. We'll make it a weekend adventure. She looked surprised, even a little uncertain, but covered it with a nod. After she left, Daniel took the kids on the promised trip. Fishing, swimming, late-night stories by the campfire. He soaked in every laugh, every hug, every peaceful moment. He didn't speak of what he knew, but every time he looked into their faces, he reminded himself he was doing this for them. While the kids slept, he checked in with his lawyer. Julia's retreat had turned out to be a lie. She had taken a flight. The PI had confirmed it. She was with him. Daniel stared at the final confirmation for a long time. Then, he typed one line to his lawyer. Let's move forward. quietly. The wheels began turning. Documents were drawn. Custody considerations arranged. Their home, his business, everything set for transition with as little fallout as possible. Back home, Julia returned sun-kissed and cheerful, spinning a tale of workshops and breakout sessions. Daniel nodded, asked polite questions. He didn't let on. He was biding time. 2 weeks later, Daniel arranged for his mother to take the kids for the weekend. He made their favorite snacks, packed their overnight bags, and kissed them goodbye. "We'll have ice cream," Lily whispered, hugging his leg. "Just don't tell me how many scoops," he whispered back with a wink. Once the house was still, he poured 2 glasses of wine and waited. Julia walked in minutes later, surprised to find him seated at the dining table. "What's this?" she asked, looking amused. "A conversation," he replied simply. "Please, sit." She hesitated, then complied. He slid a folder toward her. "Daniel, what—" "Before you say anything," he interrupted gently, "know that this isn't an argument. It's not a trap. It's clarity." She opened the folder and stiffened. Photos, dates, flight confirmations. Her voice faltered. "I can explain." "You don't need to, I know. I've known for a while. I chose not to confront you in anger. That's not who I am. But I won't pretend anymore." Silence hung heavy. She looked down, then away. "I didn't mean for it to go this far. But it did. And we have children. So we need to handle this with dignity." Her eyes filled, lips trembling. "I've already spoken with a lawyer," Daniel said. "The papers are prepared. I'm asking for joint custody. I don't want a battle. I want peace for the kids." "Daniel, You made your choices," he said calmly. "Now I'm making mine." She nodded slowly, unable to meet his gaze. He stood, gathered his phone, and paused at the doorway. "We had something beautiful once. I'll remember the good parts. I hope you do too." And with that, he left her sitting alone at the table, the evidence of her betrayal laid bare, not with rage, but with quiet resolution. The following weeks unfolded with an eerie sense of normality. Daniel continued his routine, running his successful business, caring for the children, keeping his interactions with Julia warm but distant. He noticed how her guilt, though cleverly masked, became more apparent in the small things. She would reach for his hand at dinner, but pull away too quickly. Her smiles were tinged with hesitation. Every word she spoke felt rehearsed. But he didn't rush. He couldn't afford to. Aiden had started soccer practice, and Daniel made sure to attend every session. He cheered louder than any of the other fathers, his voice always steady, always encouraging. Emma's school play was coming up, and he helped her rehearse her lines every evening. His presence in their lives became more constant, his affection more deliberate. Julia noticed, of course, but said nothing. One evening, after putting the children to bed, Daniel sat alone in the dim light of the kitchen, a glass of water in hand. His phone buzzed softly on the counter. The investigator had sent another set of photos. This time they were at a restaurant, the same man from the previous images sitting across from Julia. Their conversation was intimate, the kind of closeness that left no room for doubt. The man had his hand on Julia's, his face inches from hers. Daniel leaned back in his chair, staring at the screen. He had known. In his heart, he had known for weeks now. But seeing it confirmed still stung like a sharp wound. He took a slow breath, refusing to let the anger surface. It wasn't anger he was feeling, it was something colder, something sharper. He had to protect his family. That was all that mattered. His children needed him whole, and his business needed him focused. He couldn't afford to be a man consumed by revenge. He would not be a man who lost everything over one betrayal. Julia entered the room, her steps soft and hesitant. She had a faint smile on her lips, the kind that never reached her eyes anymore. She had been working late again, another meeting with clients that, in the past, would have thrilled her. Now, it seemed like a distraction. "Busy night?" Daniel asked, his voice neutral. Julia nodded, setting her bag down on the counter. "Yeah, just the usual. You know how it is." He gave a quiet nod, studying her carefully, but she didn't meet his gaze. Instead, she busied herself with the coffee machine, as if she were avoiding something, avoiding him. He stood up and walked over to her, his movements measured. He reached out and lightly touched her shoulder, just the faintest of gestures. Yet she stiffened under his touch. "I think we should talk," he said softly. Her hands trembled as she put the coffee mug down, her eyes finally meeting his. She was quiet for a long time, her breath shallow. "I know," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I know what you're thinking." Daniel didn't say anything. He didn't need to. His silence spoke volumes. He had known for weeks, after all. And the truth was, he had already been preparing for this moment. The anger had no place in him, not anymore. His heart was steady, calm, composed. He had moved past the need to confront her with accusations or fury. Instead, he would confront her with reality. She wiped a tear from her cheek, but Daniel didn't reach for her. He didn't comfort her. He couldn't. Not anymore. "I'm sorry," Julia whispered, her voice cracking. "I didn't mean for it to happen. It's just, things have been different between us." And then he understood me. He listened. Daniel stood motionless, processing her words. But still, he didn't react. His mind was too focused on the next steps, on protecting his children, his life, and his business. "It's okay," he said, his voice smooth. "I understand." Her eyes widened in confusion. "You understand?" He nodded slowly. "I do. But it doesn't change anything." The silence stretched between them, a chasm too wide to cross. Julia searched his face, looking for something, anything, but she found nothing. Her expression was a mixture of guilt and fear, as if she couldn't quite grasp the calmness in his demeanor. She wanted him to react, to show emotion, but Daniel had learned a long time ago that the greatest strength was restraint. He took a step back and walked to the door leading out to the garden. "I've been thinking about what to do next," he said, his voice cool but deliberate. "And I think we both know where this is going." Julia followed him, her steps quick, her hand trembling as she reached out to him. "Daniel, please, I'm sorry, He turned to face her, his expression unreadable. "It's done, Julia. We'll talk about this later, when the kids are away." She opened her mouth to protest, but the words faltered. There was nothing more to say. Nothing she could say to undo what had already been done. Daniel wasn't angry. He wasn't even disappointed. He had moved past that. Now, there was only one thing left to do. "I need you to leave for a few days," he said quietly. "I need space to think." Julia's face crumpled. "You want me to leave? Just like that?" "I'm not asking you to leave for good, but I can't keep living like this. I need to figure out what comes next." She stood frozen, caught between the weight of her guilt and the reality of what had happened. But Daniel didn't wait for her response. He turned back to the door, his mind already racing through the logistics of his next steps. He had known this day would come, but it didn't make it any easier. As he stepped outside into the cool night air, Daniel's heart didn't pound with the rush of anger. Instead, it beat steadily, with a quiet certainty. This was the moment he had been preparing for, the moment when the weight of betrayal was lifted from his shoulders, replaced by a resolute calm. He would rebuild. He would protect his children. And he would do it with the kind of dignity that Julia had taken from him. The next few days were a blur of phone calls and meetings, arranging temporary care for the children and consulting with his lawyer. The truth was, he hadn't expected Julia to leave. She was too deeply ensnared in her own guilt to make the first move. But it didn't matter. He had already moved on. He was no longer the man who had clung to his marriage out of desperation. He had become someone else. Someone who would stand firm, no matter the cost. A week later, Julia returned home, her eyes red from crying. But it was too late. The confrontation had already happened. She had already lost him. He would never forgive her. But he didn't need to. He was beyond that now. He had learned the hardest lesson of all, that real strength comes not from confrontation, but from knowing when to let go and walk away with your head held high.